felt this in the wee hours of the morning or late night or something. And it's kind of this we walk by faith, not by sight. But what is it to see before that then becomes unfamiliar as you were being taught, shown how to walk by faith and not sight? When sight was familiar to you, when sight was familiar to me, I relied upon my senses, the senses that I have in this physical place, right? My ears, my eyes, my feelings, my understanding of things, right? Oh, that's the vibe. Like I'm like feeling it, and I think these things play a part. But I think God will do this thing. I'm thinking of that like DC character, like what's his name, Daredevil or something, where he's like blind or whatever. But in being blind, he's got like heightened senses. There's like a heightened hearing, right? I think so. And so this being like where God will, as a way of increasing your faith, as a way of increasing my faith, right? Because it seems to be in this carnal place, this physical place where we've relied upon our senses, that we, by fear, are trying to reinforce our understanding of things, right? But that's so much of a heavy weight on our necks. I think and one of the reasons why God starts to have us step out of the boat and walk by faith is because you find that independence upon Him that required you to step out of the boat. You will find yourself liberated from needing to know what you thought you had to know before. You will come into knowing my Father has me. My Father has me. I can shut off my brain. I don't have to know this right now. I don't have to understand this right now. But before, it was like you were responsible for you, and so what you knew, you had to know, and so you had to be able to read everybody and read yourself and constantly be in that place where you're reinforcing your own understanding. But our own understanding has been that of something cloudy, and in that cloudiness, I think that we've been deceived in some way, and so God will take us away from our understanding, and He will start to close our physical eyes and close our physical ears. And it's more of this, not like closing them, but showing us that we can't fully trust that. Right? Because we're going to be like put into a place where your eyes and your ears and your understanding are going to be like, especially your brain or something, it's going to be like, this is no good. Like, when the physical person gets put into the refiner's fire, that fight and flight mode, that brings you into like continuous exhaustion. It's just like, we got to get out of this. We got to get out of this. We got to get out of this. And I think this is just the weakness of the flesh, right? But you start to learn a new thing, which is this dependence upon Him and His Spirit. And so then grace enters the picture, and you find that you are doing things that you weren't doing before, because the Spirit is leading you. And the Spirit will do something crazy, like lead you into death. But death for a new life to happen. But as your physical senses and things are being triggered, right? Because it's just like, oh, this is no good. This is no good. We can't deal with this. Like, your brain doesn't know. It just feels like it needs to protect itself or something. He's like, I'm showing you that you can't fully trust this. Right? I'm shutting this down to then heighten your other senses, your senses of faith. So you will hear spiritually, you will see spiritually, and you won't be able to know everything or know what's going on. And I don't think that your mind, your body, your flesh is going to know the difference. Right? And this is kind of the surrendering of the flesh, I think, to Him or whatever. It's just like, it's going to feel uncomfortable. Because what was familiar to you was seeing with your physical senses, right? Being in that carnal place where most people say this is where the world is. No, it seems to be very isolated, to be taken deeper past the surface into a place with Him where you're learning to see in a new way. Right? You're learning to see in a new way. But in seeing in a new way, you are set free from feeling like you had to rely on your other senses before. So it's basically the death of self-reliance. It's death to the reliance of self and how we look to our senses to feel safe and comfortable and like we're on the right track or something. There's something about being taken on the narrow road with him where no one's ever really walked this way before. You can't really, it's hard to tell if you're doing a good job or not. It's hard to tell if you're progressing or something. I think that might actually be somewhat of the nature of faith or something. It's like it's not something you can measure. It's not something you can look back to yourself and say, oh, like I'm doing good because I'm doing all of these things. It's like, no, like you're walking in a place that you really can't walk physically. You're seeing in a place that you can't see physically. You're hearing in a place that you can't hear physically. Like it's not that. It's like these things may play a part of it, but like the reference point of trust seems to be shifted. And that's going to be an uncomfortable thing for you because we are taught to rely on our senses. We're taught to have self-reliance. We're taught that this physical world and the surface of things is where life is. But it seems to be that he was showing me is just like kind of the process of just like unlearning something and then learning something new, and how giving yourself grace for this because you're going to be uncomfortable with it, because to learn something new comes with growing pains. Growing pains is painful. If anything is going to shift, it's not going to be a comfortable thing, like whenever you put braces on or something. Right? Like having your teeth shift, that's not a comfortable thing. So anything that involves like an actual shift of things. So if it's a shift away from relying on your carnal senses to relying on the Spirit. For one, you don't know the way. So you can just give that up right now. You kind of just surrender it in your weakness. This is what I've found. And the Holy Spirit just takes you there. He just takes you there. He just starts to show you. You're like, I don't know. I'm coming from this place because we're like in this box of relying on all of these things. And all these things that we know is everything that we know. Everything outside of the box we don't know anything about. So once you step outside of the box, you no longer are qualified to lead yourself or anything, because you're in completely new territory. And like walking by faith is completely new territory for the believer that comes from a place of being taught so heavily to rely on their senses and their understanding, and how there are things that you have to like line up. It all just seems to get thrown out the window, I guess, as God takes you into learning what it is to walk by faith and not by sight. You could have seen before, but now you being able to see with your physical eyes is not going to be that beneficial to you. It may even become a detriment to you. It may become a disadvantage that becomes an advantage, because like the Daredevil character, he's going to, turn those senses down so that you can have this grace come in where you need to like see in a new way. And he's like, here, take this grace. You're going to start to see in a new way. You're going to know in a new way. You're going to have a relationship with me in a new way. You are going to live and have your being in me in a new way that will not depend upon you and your work ethic and your willpower. Because this to me is just, the understanding of the carnal mind. This is the place that the ego and the pride has a place at the table. It's like it needs something to do, it needs something to fix, it needs something to work on. It's okay, but it's just like it's not going to help us outside of the box. So he takes us outside of the box, where now there's this need, and then in that need, he comes in, and then he starts to show you things that you couldn't see inside the box when you couldn't help but rely on your other senses. He's like, now you can't rely on these senses. And so you're having to rely on faith and my faithfulness. God, it's annoying. It's probably good at some point, right?